Hello again. We are now on to Chapter 25 of The Elements of Bree, Recovery and Roadblock. Bree smiled as the setting sun warmed her face. The stairs at the far end of the Lich's lair had led up to a cave deep in the Gaian desert. She walked out and sat by a rock near the door. Blaze and Odiana soon followed, watching the sun set as well. No one moved for a while, enjoying the silence. Finally, Bree looked over and chuckled. All their clothing was dirty and covered in worm guts, and their hair was matted as well. "We need a bath," she said. Blaze looked at her, and then to Odiana. "I think you're right." Odiana floated into the air and looked out over the vast desert. "Follow me." She took off flying towards the east, deeper into the desert. Bree and Blaze jogged after her, not sure where they were going. There were many caves scattered around this area of the desert, all of which connected to the Earth Temple in some way. Blaze noted the cave in the distance that they had gone down to get to the temple, to find Bree as they ran along. After a few minutes, Odiana stopped at a smaller cave and then slowly flew inside. They followed her in and saw her fly down into a small pit at the far end. They didn't hesitate to jump in as well and found themselves in a chamber that looked very similar to the fairy cavern in the north. There was a sparkling pool in the middle that Odiana was splashing around in. "Fairy water," she exclaimed. "It will heal you." Bree took off her backpack and hip pack and walked straight into the water. She sunk underneath and marveled at how warm it was. A slight tingling sensation washed over her as the magic healing properties of the water dealt with her wounds. There was a splash beside her as Blaze jumped in, after taking off his collar, of course. Bree finally emerged on the surface and smiled at the other two. "Are there fairy pools all over Goal?" she asked Odiana. The fairy nodded. "They're all hidden." Blaze swam around a little and then rested his head on the edge. "I say we stay here tonight and clean up," he murmured, looking like he was about to fall asleep. "Agreed," Bree replied, closing her eyes. "We leave at dawn and head to the wind tower." Fully healed and clean, the trio left just before sunrise the next morning. The air was cool, but they knew it wouldn't last long once the day went on and the heat increased. Since they managed to leave so early, they avoided any cacti or sandworms. By the time they reached the northern edge of the desert, the sun was already starting to cook the land, making the transition across the dead plains a quick journey. By the end of the day, they were camped out on a ridge in a thick section of bushes overlooking the first curve of the Royal Golian Road as it left the castle. In the distance, they could see the eastern wall of the castle, with a few guards walking along the upper ramparts. They were not dressed as soldiers or knights, so Bree assumed that they were pirates. "Can you see that far?" Blaze asked, squinting a little. Bree nodded. "As part of my gifts from the ether, I have extremely good vision. I can't see any activity other than the guards walking along the guard postings." She then looked along the road to the east. Nothing that way either. They remained in the tree line for a while, hidden, and watched to see if anyone was traveling along the road, but no one passed by. This late in the day, with the night arriving soon, travel was probably not recommended. "Where does the road go?" asked Odiana. Bree looked as far to the east as she could. "My guess is that this road connects with the Castle Goal to where the northern forest meets the Gaian desert." She opened her backpack and pulled out a map that Shen had given her. "See, there's the road, and once it leaves the forest, it branches north or south as part of the Dead Plains to either the Water Temple or the Earth Temple." "And the Ghost Town," Odiana said. "The what?" Bree asked, because there was nothing on the map by that name. She didn't answer because Blaze started to growl, drawing their attention. Emerging from a path halfway to the castle and now walking down the road toward them was a herd of 10 tortoises. They were about the size of a car, all colored bright blue and had multiple spikes on their back. With every step they took, they walked faster than any tortoise Bree had ever seen. A puff of steam came out of each different spike. They looked angry and walked like they were on a mission. "They are sulcatice," Blaze whispered. Bree nodded in agreement as she quietly shushed Blaze. She wanted them to stay as quiet as possible as the herd passed. As silently as possible, she returned the map to her backpack. As the last few went by, a rustling from behind them made them turn. 3 smaller sulcatices appeared, all about the size of Blaze. The closest one made a snarling sound and lunged at Bree. Blaze blocked the attack and rolled to the side, trying to fight it off. Odiana flew at the closest one to her and shot some fairy fire at it. The third sulcatice charged at Bree, but she was already getting one of the arrows ready. She broke the end off and tossed the shaft away. She placed the sharp end into her slingshot, drew back, and launched it at the underside of the creature. When it hit the belly, streams of electricity surrounded it, causing it to shake violently until it was dead. Odiana suddenly screamed as she got too close to the sulcatice she was fighting, and it shot its steam at her. However, it wasn't hot water, but a powerful ice mist that hit her arm and froze her skin instantly. Odiana flew away down the road to the east, in pain, her sulcatice following close behind. Blaze whimpered as well as he bit the neck of the tortoise and it sprayed his leg. The sudden freezing of his fur and skin made him jump back. Bree quickly brought out another arrow tip and killed the creature before it attacked Blaze again. "Are you okay?" she asked. Blaze nodded, but the pain on his face was clear. "Why didn't you use your fire magic?" He rolled his eyes. "I forgot I was wearing this thing. Why didn't you use the sword?" Bree didn't have an answer. "I guess I forgot too." Blaze looked around. "Where's Odiana?" They both looked down the road to see movement in the distance. "There," Bree said, pointing. Not willing to see if the road was clear, both of them ran after Odiana as fast as they could. They caught up to the tired sulcatice that had hurt Odiana a few minutes later. It had rejoined its herd and was continuing its march to the far east. Blaze had meant to kill it, but Bree stopped him. Dealing with 3 teenage sulcatices was hard enough, let alone a herd of adults with great power and strength. Odiana was nowhere to be seen, so they ran past the sulcatice herd and further down the path to the east. The sun had just set, and now the stars were hinting about coming out. After a while, they slowed to a stop and looked around them. The forest was dark and ominous. They couldn't hear Odiana's familiar tingling when she flew, nor could they see her. They stood there for a few minutes, catching their breath. "Where were those sulcatices going?" Blaze asked. "I'm guessing that since they have ice powers that they were going to the ice pyramid," Bree replied. "But what they were doing out west is something I have no idea about. My question is, where did Odiana end up?" Blaze suddenly turned to her. "What did she say when you pointed out the road on the map to her?" "She said Ghost Town, and was meaning the far end of the road all the way east, but it's not on the map." Blaze walked past her in the direction they had been running. "Then we should go there. If we hurry, we can be there in a few hours." Standing at the edge of the road at the far end of the Royal Golian forest, Bree scanned the horizon for any sign of Odiana. It was the middle of the night and the skies were clear, allowing them as much light from the stars to shine down upon them. Blaze sniffed the air and slowly began walking across the dead plains to the edge of the northern forest. It was very dense where the forest began, and there didn't seem to be a path. He stopped at the edge, staring at the wall of trees. "She's in there," he said. Bree stood in front of the closest tree and placed her hand on the bark. She closed her eyes and tried to sense Odiana. She couldn't, but her gut was telling her Blaze was right. "Let's go in, then." Ziram bowed low and waited patiently. Despite his own power, he knew to show respect and let a ruler have his or her say. He knew when to play his hand of control and when not to. He had done his part in informing that the earth element had been returned to power. In response, the silence that filled the throne room was deafening. Finally, the figure on the throne grunted and stood. Ziram stood as well. "Where is she now?" the figure asked, clearly annoyed. Ziram concentrated. "Somewhere in the Royal Golian forest. I fear she will come across some of the mystic armaments, so her movements will be harder to track. However, I'm certain that her next destination will be the Wind Tower. That is where we will go next." Reagan sneered. "Then we shall meet her there." Do.